Welcome everybody to another episode of OG Nerd King. Today we're talking about what I believe is the gold standard of anime villain groups, and that is the Akatsuki. And this is due to the fact that when you look at anime villain groups post the Akatsuki, a lot of them draw very similar parallels to them in two aspects. Uniformity, both in how they're presented, and the fact of diversity in the villain groups themselves by design. Let's give an example to one of their contemporaries in the Espada that came out during the same time as the run of Naruto with the run of Bleach. And the thing about the Espada when you look at them is that there's about 3 or 4 of them that are quite memorable. And they're also uniform, but in relation to comparison to the Akatsuki, I would say a majority of the fan base, even for the Bleach fans, only really care about 3 of them. When it comes to another group, the Phantom Troop, I would say that, again, this is another case of, unique characters, but this group lacks uniformity, but has iconic characters. But again, I would say only about 2 or 3 of them really get mentioned in the fandom. And again, another one being the Ginyu Force from the Frieza saga in Dragon Ball Z. Very iconic group. You're uniformed, the Saiyan armor and all, but as far as, most of the fandom, they remember probably 3 of these guys consistently. They're the ones that have to kind of go back and look at it. But again, this is just part of the notion that comes to anime villain groups. They're supposed to be made with these 2 ideas in mind, of uniformity and diversity. And I want to take this time to talk about more modern villain groups post the Akatsuki. We're talking about the 12 Kiseki of Demon Slayer. Now, this group of course gotten popular in the last 2 years, given Season 2 of Demon Slayer, Season 3 of Demon Slayer. But the thing about their villain group is that they lack no uniformity whatsoever. The only thing that kind of has semblance of a uniform is the number system, but each one of those characters you could not tell is a member of the Kiseki 12 outside of their eye having their number on it, and of course the characters being told, hey, that's Upper Moon. Another example of a more modern villain group is the white-clad Evangelist from Photo Fire Force, one of my favorites at the time. And again, they have the uniformity. They are definitely easy to spot and know what group they are from. But as far as, diverse and iconic character design, there's only really 2, both being Charon and Giovanni, with a guy who has a Plague Doctor's mask. And last, for the future ones, you gotta look at My Hero's League of Villains, which, again, no sense of uniformity with them. There's just a sense of identity with terms of the fact that you can kind of tell by character design if they're a villain. That's from the nature of the show, showing that certain powers and abilities are viewed to be villainous, or villainess, as you put it, for their world. That's why they kind of form themselves and why it can be identified. Now you might be asking, why am I breaking up all these other villain groups to bring up why the Akatsuki are the gold standard? And that's due to the fact that when you look at the Akatsuki, not only do they form the ideas of uniformity, rank, and diversity, but every single member of the Akatsuki is deep in depth and also can be somebody's favorite. Given the fact that the Akatsuki is a pair system, what I'm going to do now is break down the iconic pairs of the Akatsuki and why they're so memorable as characters. I like to start with a quick quote, and that is, "Money and religion are the perfect alloy." As in relation to Hidan and Kakazu, it is the driving motivations for why they join the Akatsuki, or why they act within the Akatsuki. One being Hidan's role and love for Lord Jashin, and Kakazu for the simple fact that it makes him money. Now, these 2 are probably the most forgettable of the Akatsuki, but they still have their own loyal fan base and design, both from the idea of what drives them and simple fact of how they fight. Hidan fights with his scythe due to the fact that he wants the blood of his enemies in order to offer up to Lord Jashin, and also lets him to a one-hit KO move that he has because of it. And then Kakazu fights with, quote, 5 hearts, which allows him to have multiple chakra natures, which means he's equipped to fight anyone, and he claims to have been able to fight Hashirama to a standstill, or the fact that he survived to fight Hashirama is a feat in itself. And with these guys out of the way, I'd like to move on to the next group, because honestly, any one of the groups of the Akatsuki could be talked about for an extended period of time. Let's move on to the more interesting groups. I want to start with another quote of "Make art, not war," which is a good segue into our next duo of Deidara and Sasori. The thing about these 2, which I had them above Hidan and Kakazu, is they both kind of joined the Akatsuki out of force as opposed to actual ideology, and is that Deidara lost a fight against Itachi, and Sasori lost a fight against Conan, which has been shown in the Naruto OVAs, which gave us more context of how they joined the Akatsuki. In relation to their dynamic, they acted like a married couple almost all the time because they were always arguing the philosophy of art. Deidara being art is an explosion, the ending of something is the greatest form of art, while Sasori more argued the idea of preserving one's beauty for eternal life and youth was the truest form of art. That's why he turned his body into a puppet that never ages. And I believe that this dynamic, on top of the fact that they have some of the most memorable fights in the series, with Sasori fighting Sakura Gran Chio, Deidara fighting Sasuke, and the relation to the characters themselves and how flamboyant or lack of flamboyant they could be, in such strong contrast to each other when we got to see their personalities by themselves. But it made it so more iconic and funny watching them together, because it was literally like two opposites trying to interact with each other while also trying not to kill each other. This next quote could easily sum up the next group, and is that loving one's country is not just feeling pride, but it's about taking action to make it a better place for all. This easily portrays the iconic duo of Itachi, Uchiha, and Kisame, whose name escapes me, but in relation to their story and their motivations for why they joined the Akatsuki, it's definitely twofold. And it's also considering the fact that both of them only knew about each other from legend, and that Itachi was known for massacring the entire Uchiha clan, while Kisame was also known for selling secrets and attempting to murder the Mizukage. But when it came truth to light, we never know if Kisame actually knows the truth about Itachi, but we knew Itachi knew the truth about Kisame. These two really were birds of the feather who both wanted to make their countries better but were painted as criminals for the sake of change, both in how Kisame wanted things to be more out in the open and truth and not be more of a simply tricks, while Itachi wanted the coup of the Uchiha never to happen, thus putting a threat to both his family and his younger brother Sasuke. And given that Itachi is a powerhouse in himself, and almost every time he was on the screen, he took over everything, and was such a great measure to Sasuke, for doing everything in his power to make sure at least his younger brother had a better life than him. And then you have Kisame, the tailless-tailed beast, the powerhouse of the mists, the ability to wield Samehada and deal with its large chakra absorption it does itself, while giving us some of the most memorable fights and uses of Team 13 with Neji and Guy, and the fact that the running gag that Guy kept forgetting who Kisame was. And this is the nature of the duality of these characters, and how both of them can give us some of the best fights in the series, while also having deep motivations for why they're here in the first place. The next quote I want to give is that the effects of war. You know the real meaning of peace only when you've been through war, which highly encapsulates the ideology of Pain and Konan, otherwise known as Nagato and Konan. He is easily recognized as the greatest villain in Naruto, arguably next to Madara, both for his motivations, his speech that he gives, and also the way he handled himself in the attack on the Leaf, and the fact that he was able to reverse talk no jutsu in the main character. We see a lot of things in anime where main characters are get challenged on their ideology, but no one has ever done it quite like Pain did to Naruto, and it's still being replicated to this day. We're trying to find someone who could do it like he did. Despite some goofy animation, let's talk about Pain's most iconic moment in Naruto, and let's roll the clip.
You and I are both seeking the very same thing. We both want to achieve the peace that Jiraiya Sensei envisioned. You and I are the same. We're both motivated by our desire for peace and justice. The justice that I have delivered against the Leaf Village is no different from what you are trying to do to me. Everyone feels the same pain when losing something dear. You and I have both experienced that pain. You strive for your justice, and I strive for mine. We're both just ordinary men who have been driven to seek vengeance in the name of justice. And if one comes to call vengeance justice, such justice will only breed further vengeance and trigger a vicious cycle of hatred. Right now we live in such a cycle. I know the past and can foretell our future. It is the same as our history. So we believe that human beings simply cannot understand each other, and they never will. The shinobi world of ours is ruled by hatred, and hatred alone. So, Naruto, how would you confront this hatred in order to create peace?
It's so sad how Konan kind of gets overshadowed by the sheer magnitude of Pain, despite being a great character in her own right. Like, she is the embodiment of someone who lives with the sorrow of losing the loved ones due to war, due to strife, due to conflict, and how she herself has to maintain herself and be strong for others despite losing her closest friends, not just once but twice. And last, for the last duo, I'll talk about the quote from Shakespeare. It is not in the stars that hold our destiny, but in ourselves. It's with that in relation to Obito and Zetsu, the true masterminds of the Akatsuki. And in a way, they are both cursed with their names and their families and what just led them to the decisions they made and how they got here, which is a good representation of how one is not bound by the blood that they carry. And I would easily defend Obito as a character because throughout the entire course of the franchise, once we got to know who he is and his backstory, we really got to see that not only is he similar to Pain in the fact that he's a foil to Naruto, but he's exactly what Naruto would have became if not supported by those who cared about him and had a chance to find love and acceptance, despite, of course, being cursed, something that he had no control over. I'm not going to defend Zetsu. There's nothing to defend about this character. This character helped ruin the ending of Naruto, and of all honesty, he really had nothing to do with the story outside of becoming the biggest plot device I've ever seen in a show. Well, thank you guys for staying as long as you have, for those who made it this far in the video, for my take on why the Akatsuki, in just a small amount of time, are one of the best, if not the best, villain group in anime ever written. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's been OG Nerd King. Peace.